Hey, how's it going? Today I'm doing something I very rarely do, and that is I'm filming a video and I'm just gonna put it right out there. And that's because I've got some important information that I need to get to you as quickly as possible. So this will be like a no frills, very low edit video, again, simply because I wanna get this to you right away. Last Thursday, Google put out an announcement. We've been hearing a little bit about this lately, but on Thursday, they officially announced that they're pushing out an update this week. Now, when Google pre-announces that they're going to put out an update, there's really one thing that we can be absolutely sure of. Google is signaling to us what they want us to do with our content. Whether or not the algorithm is going to do a great job of actually measuring that thing, they're at least signaling to us the direction that they're going. So we should pay attention. We saw the same thing with the Core Web Vitals update. They told us for months that this was coming and exactly what they were going to be measuring because they wanted us to start improving those things in advance, even if the algorithm wasn't going to strongly penalize websites that didn't pass Core Web Vitals. And that's what we've seen, is a lot of people putting a lot of effort into passing Core Web Vitals, right? Well, here they gave us just a little bit of a heads up for this update. The update is one that they're dubbing, they've actually given it a name, and it's the Helpful Content update. The objective here is to promote content that is helpful while deprioritizing content that is unhelpful. So we're going to talk a little bit today about how Google says that they're going to be defining these two different types of content so that you know what to watch for. Now, one thing that I want to tell you, whenever there's a Google algorithm update, it's easy to see a change start happening and want to start making changes to our content right away. We don't want to dramatically change the content all at once, especially until we see things start to settle so that we know kind of where our content, where our site lands. We can draw some really early conclusions that can lead us in the wrong direction. Also, making too many changes too quickly can lead to re-indexing of our content, kind of the retesting of our content. And so you can have content that actually the algorithm's still settling down and it's gonna do just fine, but maybe it sees a dip one day. And because of that, you go and dramatically change the content. And now all of a sudden you have to wait for it to be retested. Now, the more established your site is, the more quickly your content gets re-indexed and gets retested. So if you have a more established site, then it's probably more okay to jump in and start making changes. However, with this update, there's one thing that I would say. If you know you have a lot of content that specifically falls into this unhelpful category, really what they're calling that is search engine first focused content. That kind of content, they're saying remove it from your site. I don't usually advocate for deleting content. I don't like to completely lose work if there's any value in it, but you can revert back to a draft and it'll essentially unpublish that content from your site. I'm gonna tell you why that's important here in just a minute. So let me tell you what we do know about this update. First, we know the timing. The update is this week. Last Thursday, they said it's gonna be rolling out this week and that the rollout's gonna last for about 2 weeks before it'll be completely done. So it could start anytime right now. The next thing we know, Google says they have a new ranking signal. So this is like a completely new metric, a new test, a new automated process for checking your content for helpfulness. This isn't a manual penalty where they're gonna say, oh, this website doesn't look very helpful, we'll penalize it. It's an automated part of the algorithm that's going to apply across the web. The next thing that we know is the goal, which I already alluded to. They're promoting people first content. So content that's written for humans to help them while they're deprioritizing the search focused or the search engine first content. The other thing that we know is the impact is site wide. So if you have a lot of unhelpful content on your website, a lot of search engine focused content, but you also have some really good helpful content, that helpful content is going to suffer because of the really unhelpful content on the website. So Google's saying, essentially, get rid of unhelpful content. So we can do that by battle shipping the content, figure out what we think is unhelpful, and then making improvements to it. The other thing we can do is if we really think it's gonna hurt us, we can temporarily revert it back to a draft and then republish the article later once we've had a chance to make it really helpful. Now, Google has given us specific guidelines on what makes for people first content versus what makes for this unhelpful search engine first content. So if we wanna make people-oriented content, people first content, one of the first things they say is to create content that's on a focused topic for your website. They say that having a kind of a general website with content on a whole bunch of different topics is less helpful. And I think part of the reason for that and what they allude to in their document is that When we do that, oftentimes it looks like what we're doing is searching for the highest traffic topics across all topics of information. And it shows a low level of expertise in any particular topic. You build like no topical authority on any of the topics that you write content on. Now that kind of content is already not doing as well, but according to this, it's going to be deprioritized even further. The next thing, we need to write articles that cater to specific search queries and then make sure that the article fully addresses that search query. What Google says is that when users leave your content, they should feel satisfied and they shouldn't have to go continue searching to get more information to answer the original search query. If they need to go get more information, your article failed for that particular search query. And so your content isn't going to rank well for that search query. So make sure your content is catered to specific questions, and then make sure that you fully cover those topics, answer those questions. They say make the content as helpful as possible. Again, the point being that we want users to be satisfied, not only to have the question answered, but to have had a good enough experience that they're satisfied with the experience they had. The next one here is do original research. Honestly, I had to laugh when I read this straight from Google's announcement. They said, and I laughed because it's almost word for word something that we've been saying here at Income School for years. Does your content clearly demonstrate firsthand expertise and a depth of knowledge? For example, expertise that comes from having actually used a product or service or visiting a place. Writing an article about a location you've never been to is not advocated. Writing a product review about a product you've never touched, also not advocated. This kind of content, when we're just gathering other information that people have shared, maybe in their product reviews, maybe even in specific customer reviews on Amazon, and just aggregating that into a blog post adds minimal value. And so Google's saying that's unhelpful. All right, so what does unhelpful content look like? This is the kind of content you might want to consider unpublishing if you have a lot of it on a website. Mass-produced content that adds little or no value beyond what others have already said. If you're outsourcing content to writers and they're doing all of their research simply by reading other people's blog posts or Amazon reviews and now writing your blog post, that's not going to be good enough. If we're going to outsource to other writers, or if we're going to write our own content, we have to do original research. We have to add value beyond what other people have already said. Writing to hit a particular word count rather than to help a user. So filling an article with fluff. If you write recipes and you just fill it with stories that aren't very relevant, they don't help me cook the dish very well, that's not helpful content. That's just information, or that's just, stories. It's fluff. Google specifically says, now, I know all the SEOs out there are like, you shouldn't listen to what Google says. Google knows their product better than we do. Yes, their public announcements are going to focus on information that they want us to have, but I also don't think that they have a tendency to overtly lie on purpose. And they specifically say here, are you writing to a particular word count because you've heard or read that Google has a preferred word count? No, we don't. That's what they say. We don't. However, you will see correlations sometimes that for certain search queries, longer blog posts do better. That's because the longer blog post does a better job of completely answering the question that's been asked. That's why for response posts, we usually say about 1,000 words. A lot less than 1,000 words, it's going to be hard to cover the topic. We say for most staple posts, 2,000 plus. That's because you need to figure out what the length of the content should be based upon the search query or queries that you're trying to answer in your blog post. All right, back to the other things that we know about unhelpful content. If you choose a niche because you think there's a lot of search volume or you think it's really valuable, but you actually don't have any experience and you're not gaining any experience in the niche, chances are that your content isn't going to be very helpful. I've read a lot of content written by people who, based on my experience in their niche, I can tell they have basically none of their own. The next one, if you promise to answer a question in the headline of your article, but you then don't actually answer that question, or when you promise to answer a question that there is no answer to, they specifically say this. An example would be, and they give this type of example, a headline that promises to talk about the release date of another season of a show or of a movie, but that release date hasn't actually been announced, and all it does is say, well, it hasn't been announced yet, so we speculate that it's probably 3 months away, or whatever it's going to be. That's actually not helpful because it doesn't answer the question that people asked. It doesn't fulfill the promise the headline gave. Or we talked about this in the people first content, but if you write on lots of topics based on interest, what people's interest is, and not having a common theme across your website, not having a particular niche or industry or topic that ties all of the content on your website together. So look, here it is. This is the update. It's happening basically now. And I want to help. I want to help you be successful going forward. This is the update that basically I have been waiting for years. This is the direction we've been going and the direction we've been trying to teach for literally 5 years, 6 years. We know that trying to beat the algorithm was doable in the past, and it becomes less and less and less doable over time because the algorithm and Google, their engineers, their experience and all that is getting smarter. It's getting better at recognizing real content and helpful content rather than just having to rely on particular specific little tricks and things to try to measure what the content is about. So I am actually excited for this update, but here's the thing. We don't know how well the algorithm is actually going to work. We don't know how well it's going to be able to differentiate helpful content from search engine focused content. And so we don't know how well all of our content, your content and our content and the Project 24 members content, we don't know how well it's going to do because Google doesn't say how they measure the helpfulness. They just say that it's a new ranking signal. There's a new automated process for doing this. And so we need to see what actually happens. So as this rolls out for the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be watching the impacts across all of our sites. We have a whole bunch of them. I'm going to be definitely involved in the Project 24 community. We always have threads about algorithm updates. I'm trying to get a feel for what's happening, but I would love your help as well. I'm asking Project 24 members for the same thing. And that is, if you're willing to just fill out a really, really short, quick survey once you start to see things settle down. So if you see no change happen over the next 2 weeks, go ahead and fill out the survey and tell me nothing happened. My traffic stayed the same. That's just fine. If you see an increase, I would love to know that. And so we're only going to ask a couple questions. You don't have to give us any specific information about your site or your niche. It is helpful to know the niche that it's in, and it can be helpful to know the website because it allows us to go take a look at it and look for specific things that could have caused either the gain or for it to stay flat or for it to decrease. So if you're willing to share that, there'll be a spot where you can enter that, but it's not going to be required. At very least, we'd just like to know what happened. Did it move and how much? And that's going to help us to be able to do a much better analysis than if we are just looking over the website. So please join me in the data gathering. I'll put a link in the pinned description just below. I'll put a link in the, sorry, I said pinned description, in the pinned comment, as well as in the description of this video. So you can fill out that really basic information. You're not going to probably do it right now. We need there to be some results first. But as those results roll out, please share with us what happened for you. If you do share your URL, if you do share any other information, even about your niche or whatever, none of that is going to be talked about publicly here. None of that's going to go into any of our information. We're not going to use any of that at all in any way in the building of our websites. It is 100% guaranteed, I promise, only going to be used to analyze how what sorts of changes happened. So I hope you'll be willing to participate in that discussion, and I'm looking forward to getting to talk to you about sort of what happened here in a few weeks. Until then, good luck with your websites. Keep creating awesome, helpful content. If you're doing that already, I don't think you have anything to worry about. But if we do see a decrease, an increase, or flat, I'd love to know about it because I'd love to be able to figure out why, maybe what niches and industries are going to be impacted the most. But also, if you're willing to share your website, that's going to make the biggest difference because we'll be able to look for commonalities among sites that decreased, sites that increased. And I think that's going to help all of us do a lot better as content creators. So I hope you'll join me in that video. I hope you'll participate. Until then, keep at it. Next week, I'm going to be starting some video content about email lists, lead magnets, all that stuff, so you can make sure that you're making the most of the traffic that is coming to your website. So stay tuned for that. We'll see you there.